I'ma help the people close to me. They help the people close to them and then hope.
Ryan Jay Owens with me on the Unguarded podcast. What's going on, Ryan? Thank you for joining me for a little discussion that you already know. I've been on social media a little bit about the agents, but however, there are a handful of former athlete agents out there that have transitioned into different roles in the business, and so wanted to sit down with you and kind of have a discussion of maybe some of my blind spots, some misconceptions, and also possibly some of the beauties of what you've learned since transitioning and helping athletes to reach their goals. So thank you for joining me. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Recovering a little bit of food poisoning while traveling, but it happens. We get used to it. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you. I'm honestly really happy whenever I can spread any kind of knowledge that I have, experience, and that's actually how I got into all of this. And I'm looking forward to this talk today. Really, I love what you're doing at WeEvolve. So you came to me, I think, 4 years ago or something when we first talked, and seeing where it's gone and knowing what you're all about, I think we're aligned on so many levels. It's just that I made that transition to become an agent and do this thing, and now you want to go this other way to basically pull away the veil and democratize things a bit more. So I love it. I love what you're doing. I think many people are going to be scared of it in this industry, but change needs to elevate athletes and sport around the world, and you're doing it. So props
Yeah.
to you.
I mean, hey, we have to keep evolving, right? So
Yes.
there were a number that came before me, like yourself, that did it in a way. And Elite Volley, of course, the values, the branding, everything was different than a traditional agency in itself. And then now I was like, well, what if we take this step? And I assume someone after will take it another level, and that's the whole beauty of just trying to continue to elevate everyone. But
Yeah.
let's take it back to the transition. I always like to touch about just quickly around your, if you can kind of recall the emotional state when you knew it was like, okay, I'm done. What's next? But also then the more business and strategic thought process when you knew you had to transition that caused you to say, okay, I'm gonna do the agency thing, or maybe they both were intertwined, but kind of touch upon that emotional state, if you can recall having to transition and knowing that was it, and then in that time, what made you say, okay, agency is the way I'm gonna go?
Yeah. Uh, Definitely not the traditional transition. Um, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more or a lot more into that with the rest of the podcast, but this was a natural progression from personal experience. But I mean, this transition was completely driven by personal struggles, like in finding opportunities and having poor agent experiences from 2002 until 2005, right before I joined the men's national team. So um, it was definitely not a thing where I was like, oh, I'm coming to the end of my playing days, and what do I do? It was just a lot driven by my personal life and ending a relationship with a single father, and not having any contact with them, and feeling what it's like to, let's say, feel abandoned when you think that you're going to get a different response and something different is going to happen and somebody's going to fight for you, to being overseas for 3 years, and just being shocked. I mean, I'm not even appalled. There were so many different emotions I could explain from those three key moments in my early career where I couldn't understand why people would do that, and those people were agents and team management. Um, so that's what made me want to start something, but I had no idea then. And so, yeah, I just wanted to design something better for athletes, you know, to prevent them from having the same challenges. And when I met a speed skater, he was an Olympic speed skater, the national team training center in Colorado Springs, I had been asking every single men's and women's volleyball player if there was an agent out there that I could trust that wouldn't do XYZ to me, and they all had a resounding no. And for me, that was shocking. And I got this one person that I mentioned before as a lead through another volleyball player, and the rest was really history for elitevolley.com, which was envisioned to be a a way to democratize the job marketplace and to really bring light to, hey, these people are doing these kind of things and this is the feedback from others, and these teams are paying you and these teams are not. These teams will hold your pay until you do XYZ or whatever, just to really show. So it's really what you want to do now, I think, in so many different ways, but the same. It's driven by these same things that, like, there's just a lot of unfairness, and there's not a lot of professionals out there that are truly professional, and I think there's not enough integrity and there's not enough discipline to do the hard work in the right way.
I think one thing you touched upon, many things. You know, for me, my story was 5 agents. I include 7 because 2 of those agents had partners, and I count them as my agents because you're intertwined in that whole bureaucracy of them. Um, and I even say it, well, you have to pay attention to who you pick. But if I talk to college players right now, it's the same process as when I left school. And so I guess touching upon the individual saying, are there any good agents out there? And everyone kind of being like, no. And I resonate with that because players come to me and they're like, well, what agents you trust? And I'm kind of like, you get what you get. It's like, I don't really know what to tell you, but what is the solution? So is there a solution currently to pick a good agent to ensure you have a good start to your career? I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
Does it exist? Obviously you exist, but
Yeah.
going back to just that quick part, I just wanted to ask, okay, so what does the athlete do?
I think the first step has to be research. You have to prepare and research well before you're going to transition. You know, we have a youth project that I won't get into, but one of the things we deal with the parents is like, but my kid's too young. And I'm like, no, they're not too young to prepare, because what's coming ahead for them when they have talent now. Trust me, when the moment people start to see this, you're gonna see what the world looks like, and you're gonna get all these offers. And if you don't know a lot as a parent, even, and especially if the athlete doesn't, and if they turn 18 and people can start signing deals with them behind closed doors and keeping you out because people are great with words, it's going to set them up for who knows what. So prepare. How do you prepare? You ask lots of questions. You figure out, like, you go to podcasts like this. You start listening. I put out a lot of content with players of mine and other players talking about what their experience was, what they learned after being with me or other agents, what they should be asking up front so that they don't run into these issues. So what I say is, don't be afraid. If you want to get to the highest level, I'll tell you one surefire way to know if you're going to be ever able to get even close. Start asking people at much higher levels than you how they could have done things better and what they would want to do better. So read the books, listen to the podcast, but reach out too. When I started Beyond Athletic podcast, I was just reaching out to, I didn't even care. I was just like, if you're a multiple time New York best-selling author or you're super famous, I'm just going to DM everybody that I'm interested in, and whoever writes me back, great. If I get one person, I have way more knowledge now than I had before. So that's what I would say. That's the starting point. Start there, prepare, ask really difficult questions. Was there any time that you ever felt uneasy? Was there any time you felt like, you couldn't trust this person because of something they did? Why? What happened there? What could have you done? What could you have done better? Like, ask difficult questions. So many times people ask such easy questions, such surface level questions that's what you're going to get. You're not going to know what happens when you peel back everything, right?
Hmm.
So
Right.
that's a
That,
starting place in my opinion.
can you talk a little bit about the player agent experience you've had? And for it going bad, of course, you don't have to, I'm sure you could write a book on
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
just touch upon the player agent experience from your standpoint. And then the agent I assume you finished your career with that agent, that you chose the next go around.
Mm.
Kind of how did that transition? Did you finish your career with an agent? So talk about the bad and then the upside of finding the right partner to represent you.
Yeah. Uh, I'm you talked about emotions in the beginning, so it's like the fuel for me doing and building this company, which is more than just an agency, is driven by these emotions that I'm feeling right now. But getting over here early was my first experience. Coming in like April, spending the rest of my money from student aid to get a flight over here and just risk everything because I had nothing at that point and I really wanted to play volleyball. I could see myself in the Olympics. And then finding my own team through a lot of hard work. I mean, trust me, 2002 on the internet, dial up, no Google Translate, finding teams, like that was hard. It took a lot of time, a lot of coffee shops, and I found my team. I tried out. I transitioned from one position to the next. I didn't let them know that I was in that position, but I really believed I could make it as an opposite in volleyball. And I had the company that I was scheduled to go on a tour with to find jobs call me after I said, "Hey, I'd like my money back because I'm not going to go on your tour. I found a team. Oh, congratulations, blah, 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 yada, yada. Oh, who's doing the deal for you? I found it. Oh, whoa, how'd you do that? Blah, blah, blah. Do you have a contract with them? No, I don't. I don't know what to sign, but I'm sure they'll send me something. Oh, we have a template. We could send it to you. No problem. Don't even worry about it. It's the least we could do. You're American. We're American. They send me this contract and they ask what's the name of the team. This is when I learned a lot about giving out the names of anything, and this is why I keep a lot of things close to the chest. To find out, a week later from my team that they were asking for money and they were trying to say that I was their player. And they owed me money from the tour that I never signed an agreement that I would not get money back if I said I don't want to go. So they didn't want to give me the money back and they tried to take money from my team. And then the next one that was huge was an agent. I went back and forth phone calls, and I remember one day sitting in my kitchen on a bench, but there was no table, and my table was it was like a chair or a bench chair, whatever. No, there's no back to it, and I put two of them, and I put a cardboard box, and that was my table. And I was sitting there and remember playing like some Dungeons and Dragon type thing on internet that I was barely getting from somebody like, I don't know, a few buildings away probably in Czech Republic. And I was like eating, croissants. That's all I could afford every day from the money that the team would like, oh, here you go. Even though they owed me all this money. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I paid my flight to come like there from America. And I was like, what? I went to the team, the opening night, and this was after that. And I sat there and I said, I gave him the e-ticket. It was when e-tickets were a new thing. He didn't want to pay me back. He said, what is this? He said, where's your ticket, your receipt? I said, this is the ticket. They email it to you. Like, what do you want from me? Like, and he wouldn't pay me. And so I was just so frustrated because, Joy, this was a month and a half into me being there. And imagine every day getting more and more frustrated and just, you're lonely. You don't have anybody. I don't have a family back home to really talk to. I had a couple best friends through volleyball that I was getting closer and closer to. So I'm really depending on this agent. I'm like, can you help me? And every week, every day, calling, texting, whatever, email. And I'm sitting there and I go, you know what? I'm going to write a letter to this agent. I write everything out. I can't send it because the internet's not working. I get internet the next day, it sends out. I'm called into the team, I'm in like the locker room, and I get called into another room. They say, hey, Ryan, somebody wants to talk to you in here. I come and they say, hey, it's not acceptable what you're saying about the team and blah, 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 and you need to go. And I was like, what? I've never talked to anybody. I've never said anything to my teammates about they're
Yeah.
not paying me. They're like, I have no furniture in my flat. I have like a sheet that's like is big enough to cover like my upper torso. Like, oh, what? The agent forwarded my email because he was lazy to tell the problems to the
So he
team.
didn't read it and didn't
Yeah.
pay attention.
And
Yeah.
I said, George, I mean, I let loose. I was pissed. It was so much time. And so I learned, like, through that.
Yeah.
And then one more time, a team in Germany, they signed a contract and I signed it in German. And I had all my German handball players, professionals, and all the people I could find to say, is this okay? And they said, yeah, everything looks good in here. But there was one tiny thing, the legalese in there, saying that I was responsible. The way it was written, it was tricky, but I was responsible for getting my work visa. And guess who was getting my work visa with me? The team management, because I can't speak German. So every
Mm-hmm.
time I went to the Ausländerbehörde's office, I am calling him and he's talking to the woman because I'm in Eastern Germany and they don't speak any English in those offices. And he gets me a student visa. And I had no idea that he got a student visa. He just goes, everything is done. And so a week later, when we start season and we get blown out, coach puts us in the wrong lineup. All of a sudden, coach is not at training the next Monday. We're all in there with the manager and he's making us do crazy like X whatever drills, like war type drills. It's crazy the way we're doing things and these little things. I have a hand injury and the doctor, everybody knows it. I haven't been able to use this hand because of a blocking injury in preseason. And so I can't set. And so he wants to force me to set and I deny him and I'm trying to be polite. And I'm actually a really, back then, light spoken, super shy
Mm-hmm.
person. And I get pissed because he's like pushing me and I'm like, I can't do it. And I feel like this moment with my father back in the day where I said, I'm done with you. And I get pissed with this guy and I say, you know what, screw it. No, make me do it. And he's like, you can go home. And I said, okay, I'll go home. And he goes, no, you can go home to America. I was like, F you. And he goes, F you. And then it's like this shouting match. And then I realized what just happened. And now, next day, I want to meet with the president because I'm like, hey, that was nuts. All my teammates support me. They saw what happened. I have but I'm wrong. I should have never done that. I should have just and talked to an agent, but I didn't have an agent because
Mm-hmm.
I've been screwed a couple times, so I didn't want to do
Yeah.
it. So now what happens? They fire me for that. The next year, a player was coming to that team. I was able to tell him what to look for in the contract. He did it. They tried the same thing with him. He sued them. He won. So for me, that taught me everything I need to know. I ended my career using an agent that I trusted to do the legal work, but I did all of the finding of the teams and revising, looking at the contract and asking because I had already had my contract or my partner and my business since 2006. So in 2017, when I had ended, I already knew a ton about the legal side of the business. So he just helped me be kind of like the face for me,
Right.
and I did the rest. And whenever I needed help with money and whatever, he did that. So I really appreciated him for that because he was hard to find. It was the one agent I could find in the sport. So sorry for
Mm-hmm.
a super long answer, but that's it.
No, I mean, yeah, I think it's very emotional. I think we all go through it. It's kind of like
Yeah,
the teams have all of this leverage and power.
so
And if
much.
you dare say anything, it's tough. But it leads me into the point of the misconceptions of, a lot of agents that I talk to say, okay, for me, it's kind of like, well, you guys have seen this happen over and over for 20 plus years. And you say you're here for the player, but none of
Mhm.
you, I see no track record of anybody trying to do anything to advocate for the players. And then
Yeah.
it's kind of like, well, it's y'all have to go to your unions or blah, blah, blah. And so I guess That's what I see as the player side. I haven't had the luxury of really being in the positions you've had to be in where it's hard from
Yeah.
being an agent in the middle. So I guess what are some of the misconceptions you think players don't recognize that makes it hard for those agents to really advocate in the way that maybe the players sometimes want them to advocate?
Yeah. Um, a lot of times players think that agents are, it's like, what's that? I should know it because I run an agency, but what's the agent? It was like Tom Cruise or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Show me money. This
yeah.
a lot of people, I feel like they have this image in their mind that agents are like wheeling and dealing and like, oh, you can come here and you trust me, this player, and blah blah blah, and they're smooth talkers in this way. Teams are like, I want you, or maybe, or hell no,
Right.
or no right now. Usually that's the spectrum. So players don't understand that most of the time, what you've done so far on and off the court, because they're going to ask everybody they know in their world about who you are on and off the court, in trainings, in matches, in life. Are you partying and leaving the team car and like, you know, everything. This is the first thing. The other thing is legal. The contract is so important, and I think that athletes underestimate. If your agent, if you come to them and they can't explain, like have them explain the contract to you, and then ask them how many clauses protects you rather than protect the team. If you go to any lawyer who's going to be honest with you and neutral, like because they don't have anything to do with any business you do. If they're hired by a company, their job is to get everything on the side of that company, everything possible to protect that company. That is the team's contract for the player. So the agent's job must be to try to balance that out. Maybe even get it in favor of the player if that player has incredibly high value. And that's what happens sometimes. So those two things, and then I think the ethical dilemmas, it's like I've been offered lots of money to sign a player to a team, and there's a deal that my player doesn't know about potentially. I'm sorry, but like, no, it's not gonna happen, And so, yeah, you burn some bridges almost immediately, but okay, we could do that. But maybe what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to be very transparent with my player, and I'm going to let them know. And I'm going to let them know if you're okay with this, then we will figure out an agreement for that. Because maybe I don't want to burn those bridges, right? Because there's players to come after them. It's a way to get players to different places. So I've had to learn like, okay, maybe I can't be all against all of these ways that people are doing things, but I can find a way to be a partner with my athlete and only move forward when we both agree with everything. And
Right.
that's the way I navigate it. And then I have my own moral compass. So I think that there's so much work that I do when you ask like what the actual work is. If you're good enough, you're going to get that job. But there are the times where like I know a lot about my player and I need to get them this job and I know they could be great. And I'm going to push and push and push, but I'm only going to push enough so it doesn't ruin that relationship. That's really hard. So there's all of those kinds of things. And then there's the whole, like, if players are not doing what they should, if they're, and then managing those situations, like I call it cleanup. Oh man, that's
Right.
really hard. That's a lot of work. It's so much work, Jory. And
I mean,
when
how
my
much?
players go 3 years, sorry,
Yeah,
when
go
they go
ahead.
like 3 or 4 years and they know how to work, I usually never have much cleanup anymore. But it takes about that much time, so they know. Sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say, I think yeah, transparency, I believe is a part of key. Like I think for me, I would rather like to see how many deals I could have, even though my agent knows that okay, that's not a good deal for you to take. Um, I think there's also power in which I tell players like, which we can get into that, yeah, like hey, sometimes you're helping the agent build their network.
Yeah,
because there's teams that they don't have a connection to
100%.
asking for talented players. And that's where those players, when we talk about this open market and potentially building a network as players,
Hmm.
um, those players could build that network because they
Yeah,
are doing it. Their social currency is helping someone else build their business and they don't even know it.
yeah. And their
And
athlete
then
identity.
don't give it back to
Identity.
the community because the agent has it when you could have given that connection to like 20 other players
Hmm.
that probably are valid enough to play at that level. Of course, that's the part too, but that's another thing. But I guess the when it comes to the misconception, what are some of the things that the player needs to be accountable for that we don't see that causes frustration and makes it hard for an agent to do their job well?
Yeah. Just real quick to touch on what you just said about that, and then I'll come back to that because that one's an easy one. But I think that players, if they understood their power, the sport doesn't exist without you, without us, period. They need us. So if you understand that, and if you are honest with yourself about not just your potential, but your current level, those higher level players, yeah, if you open the doors, great, you can do those deals, but do you know how to do those deals? And that's where the agents really come in. So that's where I know what you're doing and why. And it's going to work, I think, in those ways because, yes, those jobs will come to you as soon as the teams know that they can get to you. So if you have somebody you can trust and they really do that job well, then you can say, I'm going to offload this and outsource this to you because I know that you're being transparent and I know you're doing this work and it deserves this pay because I don't want to do it. I don't want to have to negotiate. I don't want to do anything. I want to focus. And trust me, after how many years in my career of doing it, while being a player, I know that it takes a toll. So, what are some of the ways that athletes can really like help the agents? Repeat back what you understand about contracts, whether or not the agent asks you. I ask my players, and we go through lengthy like talks and they never like it, but at the end they go, okay, my brain hurts, but I get it. Like go through those things and understand, but also understand like, okay, how just ask a simple question like, hey, how has somebody else screwed up an opportunity like this? How have they messed it up,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was on or off the court? Then they might go through, they talk back to the coach. They said something to a player that they shouldn't have said. What are those types of things? Oh, they're like this and like that and like this, right? Oh,
Yeah.
they were never really on time. They were one of the later players, or they were getting there on the dot and they didn't understand that they should be there earlier, or whatever the things were, or they were asking for money all the time, and it's my job. Don't pressure the team, especially when you're not doing well, because trust me, they're gonna alienate you. You become the target. Let me be the target because they're never going to know whether or not like they think I am you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why you have me. So I can speak diplomatically and I can do these things and I cannot have the emotions attached to them because I have that experience
Yeah.
and I had that experience, so I really know how you feel. So it's like that's how you can screw it up by not letting your agent do their job, but also by not asking how you could screw up doing your job.
Yeah. But
I
that
think.
is key though too, because some agents feel some of those things aren't their job.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
a player arrives and things
100%.
aren't prepared in the apartment, and
Yeah.
you're like, "Where's how long for the Wi-Fi? Why is the heater not working? I
Yeah.
just got here. They knew I was coming," or those
That's
types of
scary.
things. Your lifestyle stuff when that's not ready, then you have some agents that say talk to the manager,
Yeah.
but you're starting practice. So their side of the deal of the contract is not ready, but you have to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
But if I stay home and say I'm not starting my job until your side of the contract is ready, and then I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you're alienated, and it's like, oh, you're a problem, and da 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 da. But you're the one that don't have my stuff prepared for
Yeah.
when I come. And some agents, they're not that voice, which is I think a lot of agents. I mean, there are a number of players right now when it
Which
comes
is
to the
shocking to me.
lifestyle part, the apartments and all of that. It's not prepared. So I guess one question for me is, do you think some teams know which agents to make sure those things are prepared and ready for
Oh yeah.
those types of agents players, and there's certain agents that they're like, oh, we know we can get over on them.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's, you know, I say to players, like, I try never to burn bridges, because as an athlete I did it later in my career because I was so pissed off, and then I realized, like, wow, I shouldn't have done that.
Hmm.
But thank goodness that was men's and I'm in women's,
Yeah.
so it's helpful. But I try to leave those doors open, and I try to be as, like, transparent, honest, um, empathetic to that person and managers and just people with the team, because I understand how hard that job is too. Like, I've wrapped my head around it now because I ask them a lot of questions when I meet them. I don't usually just small talk.
Hmm.
So I think that when I can see when I don't work with a team often, when I don't have a certain type of player, because I know they know it's going to be more work, or they know they know they'll be annoyed more. Like, and that's a shame, but I'm okay with that because it helps me gauge who's going to how can I get my player prepared. So the great thing, though, is, Jory, is honestly I can get ahead of all of that. Whenever a team says we don't have to put that in the contract, we're going to do that. Okay, great, so it's going in the contract.
Yeah.
But no, we shouldn't. No, it's going in the contract.
Hmm.
Why wouldn't it?
Why
If it's
why
no
why does
problem for
it
you,
why yeah why does it have not, it's fine, just
because they know when it comes down to it, they don't want to be held accountable for it. And
right.
so I make sure that the contracts are as detailed as possible. It's like a bed that's a certain size, a
Hmm.
new or newer car or apartment, et cetera, et cetera. Like, really trying to get detailed. High speed, unlimited internet,
Yeah.
like getting around all of these different things, these nuances where they can say, oh, we're not going to do that for the athlete.
Yeah. I mean, even that, it's difficult. I was even proposing at some point we need to just put like a side note or appendix to the contract, like acceptable, not acceptable,
Yeah,
acceptable, not
yeah,
acceptable. So they have images now to say you knew what you see on that image is not okay.
yeah,
So and that's the part that's
yeah.
is difficult, but again, as I do understand that sometimes that is we want our agents to do that, but I know sometimes it's a lot to have to do that for so many players in so many
I
countries
don't think so.
and so many teams.
You mean put it in the contract,
No,
or
not put it in the contract,
nah?
but the constant trying to call and say, "Hey,
Yeah,
this
that is a
isn't
lot.
ready."
Yeah.
Um, so I think the other question around the tapping into the misconceptions, because I think it's key for especially myself to hold myself accountable, even though as much as I push back on agents, is that players need to be held accountable as well. And so I just want to make sure as we move to the next topic that we're clear on what things players need to also not constantly argue. We see players on Instagram, oh, it's FIBA fault, or in your guys's case, the volleyball federation, they need to do something, or yeah, these agents aren't blah blah blah. One of the biggest things I think that I will say one for accountability is that there is nothing in life where if someone does a service for you, you don't pay for it. For athletes, we want agents to advocate for us extremely well, but yet they're paid by the team. Now, I kind of go back and forth with that because I believe a team has a budget. So 100K for this one player, they're gonna offer maybe 80. Try to, they that whole budget includes that agent fee. So if there's an agency fee in that budget, in my opinion, it's still you're paying, because maybe if you came without an agent, that's more money through that budget that you can put in your pocket compared to the percentage, of course. But all in all, what we know to be true is that the player doesn't send that money to the agent and say, here, paying you for your services. It's the team that pays the agent. So one thing of accountability is like if we want agents to be on our side more and advocate for us the way we feel they should, we should pay them, and we should make that a normal process. But what other accountability tips I think for the athlete community kind of need to be said when it pertains to that agent player relationship?
Yeah, about the payment, it is different sometimes. Like it's not always that way. The new American League, like they refuse to pay agents, so player has to pay if they want to use an agent. And of course, I always advocate for use an agent if you don't know what you're doing. If you really know what you're doing and you can handle it, do it yourself because yeah, you're gonna make more money. You're gonna make more money. So whether that's 10% more or that's 20% or that's 5, I don't know. As for the other things, and honestly, like I remember when we started off the business, I really liked the model when we did have players paying us, and we took very little from the teams, if anything. It was always half and half. We got half at the end to finish out our contract. So they knew we were there. And for me, I love this because I'm going to work no matter what. But I think this holds a lot of people accountable to stay through to the end to get all of their money. I think I would make contracts with agents more like that, honestly. So the other ways, though, I think players need to understand that if they enter agreements with agents, that if you start doing shady things, it just perpetuates shady business. So if you talk to the team or you talk to other agents without telling your agent, it's just wrong. Like tell them, like what's the worst that could happen? If they show their true face, they show their true face.
Yeah.
Let them do that. But don't be the person who just hides and does all these things out of fear or thinking you're slick, because honestly, it worsens everything because people know people, and everybody who's hurt wants to hurt someone else. And if you hurt them, they're definitely going to want to hurt you, and that's going to come back somehow. And I really, it's funny because like whenever I get hurt in this business, I'm just like, I kind of have this weird perspective of like, why would they do that to me? I'm just an athlete like them, but I don't
Yeah.
even play anymore. So I don't know why I still have that, but like, I don't want to get back at them. I'd rather, say, okay, you're hurt from something, or you misunderstood something. So maybe if
Right.
I leave that door open in the future, we can talk. And with any athlete I've ever had anything, we can always talk. So I would say, talk with people about things you're gonna do. If people are doing, like, if your agent can trust you and you can trust your agent by saying like, I want to see sometimes what is being said, ask for transparency in that way. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. Or you show that, screenshot something and try to see if they will do the same thing for you, so that you can start to build that trust. There's so many other examples. If something else comes to my mind, you do such a good job on touching on this stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I
hope
would say be careful too with the screenshots, because I know one agent that sends screenshots to build trust, but then started to see like, okay, let me watch what I say, because
yeah.
sending screenshots of what other players have told
See now,
him, and then now you're in
that's
this
not good.
issue where you need to pay close attention, because
Yeah.
now there's no trust, because if he's sending screenshots of other players' stuff,
No, that's not okay.
that for sure
Yeah.
now whatever you say, he'll use that WhatsApp thread to use it against
Yeah.
you. So it's also a mix of being careful and doing that only with the agent or someone that you trust and have a real agreement
But
with, I
also
think, for
deals.
sure.
I think when I talk with my players inside the agency, because we have a hashtag Elite Volley fam, and it was actually, that was even the slogan was created by one of our athletes. So, and I loved it, but I really say, I'm going to use everything that I know to help somebody else, but I'm never going to mention your stuff. If I say to you, hey, can I use this with other players? Can I talk about this? Can I use your name? I cannot do that to players because I understand how delicate that is, and it makes no sense. I would never do that. But what I will do is, if a team is talking with me and I want you to know what's being said, I'm going to show you. I'm never going to show you personal information of somebody else that has nothing to do actually with you. Or if it does, it's like perspective and like, you know, whatever. I don't, those are boundaries you should never cross. I think there has to be healthy boundaries,
Right.
which is another thing with agents. Have and teams boundaries, very professional boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's I mean, those are lessons in its own. Like we could do
Yeah.
workshops probably of leverage. Leverage is one that I think players need to understand. Like you said, hey, right now you're not playing well. It's probably not the time to try to push. Let your agent try to push for that late payment
Yeah.
because, but knowing, hey, you just dropped 30 or something,
Yeah.
want a
Say it.
bit of
I
big
tell my
teeth.
player too. I'll
Hey,
be like, tell him right now. Go tell him.
where's
Give me
my
my money.
money? Where's this? This is the time. It's like you got to learn leverage, and then of course, like you said, there's these little things that you have to boundaries in the sport industry. Those are all kind of workshops, master classes that we'll have to collab on and do something after.
Yep.
Boutique versus mega agencies. We had another call where we talked about a
Yeah.
player's experience of what they thought going to the big name, the shiny agency. Their talent definitely still good enough to be rightfully so with an agency on that caliber, but still finding out that the attention that was given wasn't the best. Not to say that a mega agency is all bad. Obviously, they have their pros and they come with their cons, like everything. Break down kind of the key differences boutique agent versus the mega agencies, and truthfully, when do you think it's imperative for that player to have boutique versus mega, or now in 2024 in this new generation, do you think the player actually needs those mega agencies where, in my opinion, most of them were more so, when you have a bigger brand and they have those marketing deals and they can get you kind of more of those things while also finding the job. But I guess, yeah, break down difference between boutique versus mega agency and from your side of the coin.
Yeah. Um, I mean, the obvious big one is more resources, more reach. They have the teams because they've had the names, so that's easy for them. They probably have a long-lasting relationship, but they also probably have long-lasting trends of ways of working, and that could work for you or against you. They're probably not thinking so outside of the box because they've created basically a box, and for them, that's the way they want to keep working. I think that the problem, you're going to get more individual attention at a boutique agency for sure, or anything smaller than the mega ones, because obviously they have less players. But if you don't, then that's a big yellow or red flag. I believe that agencies could be restructured and reimagined to be almost like boutique agencies, because there are so many areas across the span of a career. In the beginning, you know so little, and what I fight so hard for with Elite is to help athletes before they transition to understand some of the things they need to know about research, about like how agents work, about all that stuff. But once you get in it, like I said, it's going to take 2 to 4 years depending on the person, depending on how they grew up, what foundations they had at home from other people in their life, what intrinsic things they have, to really grasp what it means to be a professional and to be them as a professional, because each athlete is so unique. And so during that phase, I think that you need to be incubated. You really need it, because like later on, you won't have to deal with all of that stuff. The
Right.
faster you can get through the muck, while maybe you're cruising because you're doing well and you've had this great career. So for the high level athlete coming into pro from college, I think a boutique agency can be great if they understand how to teach them to navigate that world, so that that muck doesn't come later and they don't make missteps that get their career off track. So I think that it really depends on the quality of the people running the agency, what their whole ethos is, what their concept of like the relationship between player and agent management. I think if they don't have a partnership idea, if they have a dictator or I'm just a passenger type mentality, right? I'm just getting this money, I'm doing this deal, I have the contacts, boom. It's a transaction. If it's transactional, be very careful. And the way you find this out, if I can get into that, yes?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, just try to look at a list of athletes that were, and if like agencies are smart, I mean, they'll just get rid of these names and the history of that, but you should be able to figure it out. Figure out who was with some agents and just contact them and say, why aren't you with this agent anymore? And please be as objective, but also sprinkle in as much subjectivity as you can to give like really context to everything. But I want to understand why you wouldn't stay with them or whatever, right? Because what I've learned is that the big agents, I lose players to them all the time because all they need to do is get on a phone call and say to like All American or Olympian or, you know, pro championships with 10 medals, hey, be on this call with me or be in this coffee with me. Okay, I do that. I do that now with my best players. But guess what? I say talk to them. Ask them how they don't work well with me. What could be better? What sucked? What's been most difficult? Are they 100% in or are they still on the fence? I want them to get used to that discomfort and feeling okay with even saying that to me because I need to be pushed. Everybody needs to know they're not perfect. And so like I think that if athletes start asking those hard questions, how has it sucked with them? You know, really, that's really
Yeah,
the question. And any
yeah,
variation of that, you're going to learn that most of these bigger agents are just transactional. Some of them care on some level, but many of them, they don't need to have been a player. They don't need to have been all these things. They just need to be a human that has empathy and that has hard work to understand what it's like to be you and to make sure that your path doesn't get complicated by things that don't need to complicate it, especially starting with the contract, but then also with image and helping you with your character. If they see something off, making sure like, hey, you got to get this together. You can't be like
right.
this.
Yeah,
And if you want to
yeah,
be like that, I don't want to be with you. There's too many agents, I believe, they keep these players who are just like, they're just entitled and they're brats and they're
right.
doing
And
the
it
wrong
hurts
stuff.
the agent. It can hurt the
Yeah,
agent. Yeah.
big time.
Um, with the, I mean, I think there's a level of accountability players should have as well, especially the bigger name players, like you said, the mega agencies having a player come sit in the coffee. And I've seen it where bigger agencies or bigger name players will make that connection for an agent, and then you might see that player no longer with that agent. And so
Mhm.
I just feel there's a level of accountability we all must take. Like, if you don't feel right with an agent, then tell the agent no, you don't want to do the coffee.
Yep.
Because it's not fair for you to not be truthful to a player that's coming to you to try and make the best decision for their career and you not say the truth.
Yep.
Or even if you're a player that the agent really doesn't do much work for you, you just for some reason want to just let him keep making money, and that's fine. You have loyalty, so you're like, hey, for everything you've done up front, fine, take
Yeah.
it. But then you should be clear on being clear. Like, I mean, some players ask, like, oh, everything you're doing, was that your agent? Well, no, I did these business things outside of my playing career on my own.
Hmm.
And being clear, because sometimes there's a misconception that everything the player has going on, that the agent was at the center of it, and that's not true either. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes agents benefit from that as well. And it's all of these things, everyone in the industry, especially players, assume, oh, they're agent.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, they got to that team, the agent. Well, maybe they got to that team because the team wanted them and they were talented, and the agent is
Exactly.
benefiting that they have to be a part of the deal. There are
Exactly.
times where the agent seeks out a coach and says, I think you should see this player, and you get a deal.
Yeah.
The agent did that. Behind scenes, that is not clear.
That actually happens much less than the other way because the bigger talents the teams have been paying attention to for years. So they know them. So they're just waiting for which agent is going to have them in the end. Honestly, that's what they're waiting for. It's like, and so the other agents or the other players that are, yeah, they need to be really pushed to the teams, but that doesn't mean they're not good or as good as the other player. They just don't have that image, perhaps, you know? So yeah, that's where it comes in. But a lot of those deals are because of exactly what you said. The teams came to the agent because they knew the agent had that player. Not even because they love working with that agent. They just know they have them. So that's why choosing the right person behind the company is really, really important.
Right. What would you say about players, again, when we talk about all these bad agents out there? How could we as players just be more aware? Because technically the agent without any talent isn't an agent. They can go try to get a job with the team and just be a recruiter. So in my mind, it means if players collectively say, these are the people we want to work for us, that cleans the market up, right? Because
Yeah.
they can't force you to sign with them.
Oh, yeah,
Or do
100%.
you think there's this other bureaucracy and political thing where it won't work?
I think that works for sure. There's going to be things where just some people are going to want to work with these people because it's a golden goose for them. They understand that they've got a pipeline, they've got other things set up with other people, they've got backing, right? They've got this funnel of athletes coming in from somewhere, somehow. And I don't really want to get into all of that, but it does exist, you know? I mean, that is how they're running some of these businesses. It's like, I can have them in this network and then I lock them in and I've built this. I have built that. I did that work. But you're going where we want you to go. You're not going where you want to go. Like you think you're going somewhere maybe you want to go, but you're not. So I think being very like asking an agent, you know, I don't want to hear best case. I want to hear worst case. Like where could I go? Why? And what might be the path less beaten for me, you know, and why would I do that? How could this great deal go wrong? You know, like talking to players, like, hey, you went, I want to talk, give me your players, and I want to ask them in the first deals that they did, like, you don't tell the agent that, but you go to the players and you just ask them, in the first deals you did, do you feel like that was a great fit for you? And if not, why not? What could you have done better? What could your agent done better, if anything? Try to ask these kind of questions because really it can help. It really can
Yeah.
help.
When it comes to the knowing the worth of the players, this
Yeah.
is a constant one I think me and my my agent go back and forth about all the time because it's just kind of like how I understand agents have been in the business for a certain amount of time, so more or less it's okay. We know more or less what clubs have what money, but also I've been told by a manager that they can tell they know certain agents they can get a certain amount of money for their talent, and they know certain agents they can get good talent for less. It's like a grocery store.
Yeah.
And so if the agent that's selling the talent for less, whether they know it or they don't know it, that still means that there's not transparency, which means how can the agent really know the player worth in this marketplace? And so I guess touch upon worth in salaries in the marketplace. Of course, overseas, I think basketball and volleyball are pretty much the same. There's no transparency around the salaries. Um, how do you navigate that, and what are your thoughts around navigating that in general as a player?
Yeah. Trying to, I mean, as a player, I was always like, how much am I supposed to ask for? Like, I have no, I have no idea. What is this worth? I don't know. And so being on the national team that first year in 2005, it was, oh wow, like asking questions and understanding, like hearing for the first time insane numbers and just being, for me, insane, you know, for them quite normal, and just being like, there's a massive gap between starting at this level or starting at that level or playing and then being at this level or being at that level. Like you're not super high level anymore, but you have all this experience, but you can still get way more money than this other person because of all these things that you offer that people just can't, they can't see, they can't feel them even. I think I learned the learning curve for that was the hardest one of like opening an agency and now having a company that has agency and recruitment for USA, events, tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So how to get there, it's just like, okay, if I do these deals and I start to see this team is paying this in this country and this team is paying this, and I'm asking around and I have this idea that maybe this is getting paid, or this player for sure told me this, or I saw this contract, you can start to paint a picture, but then it becomes like for the individual athlete, because you have like, okay, if you are a player in this league and you can do these kinds of things, and we know that the top level is around 100K, for instance, and you're at like 50K, okay, what's the reason? We can't be upset. We need to understand the reason. If there's a reason, okay. If there's not a reason, we need to ask for that money, period. And then we need to stay firm for that kind of money or something in between generally, because usually you can't just jump from 50 to 100. Like, it's an insane jump.
Right.
Unless you did something insane.
Yeah.
And if you did, like, great, get that money, right? Like, but it's really like, it's one of those things. If you've just been that consistent player, you're growing, you're going to get more and more money. So I could see, like, you know, out of college, when my players would come in to play pro, I understood that, like, on average, for sure they were making 30-40% more than most of the other athletes, because I understood what the value was of a player that was going to do what she was going to do at a basic level in that league.
Right.
And so I just say, we can't even talk about these teams. So players start to get desperate and they're like, yeah, but what about that team? What about that? No, none of these teams work because they don't have the money for you, or they have the money, but it's all promises and you're going to get 70% or 50%. It's not worth it. I'd rather put you at a team that's going to pay you half of what you're worth if we can't get what you're worth. If you're playing against those same teams, and now the next year we can get you way more than what you could have got that year. Just because people undervalue you that year, and you killed it. You were MVP, you were all these different things. And that's happened before, you know, like we've had players that come out of NCAA, they weren't even All-Americans, and now they're playing at the highest level in Europe. They're not even with the agency anymore, you know, some of these players, because they went for mega agencies and they thought, oh, but you don't have these contacts. Even though I sat in those offices for that player, because like they didn't understand that if you don't have that level, you're not going to get that job. But I'm doing the work to prepare, but you need to do your work.
Did those players get those jobs going to the mega agencies?
No.
So that's another
I
misconception.
hate to be smiling. I'm just smiling for the fact that, like, it's ridiculous because the mega agencies sold them on that crap. And the players were just, it's like, it's dark psychology, right? Using the other players, leveraging them, doing all of these things. And these people are vulnerable. And the players, we have no idea. So we just go for it. And some of these players are even with the same teams, you know, like it blows my mind. And now the agent gets money for doing
percentage
work that somebody else did.
Yeah. I mean, that's one accountability thing you just touched on, is that players understanding when they've been sold something, and then when they've been sold something and they don't get it, say something.
Yeah.
Like, because that same tactic is happening. You're leaving a smaller agent to go to a mega agency and making the rest of these young girls that are looking at you, the rest of the community of athletes, think that, oh, she went there and now boom, when that's not the reality. The reality is someone worked with you to get you in the right space. You did great, and now you're there, and you could have did that with that agent.
Yeah.
The only other thing that comes up is politics and bureaucracy. Do you think mega agencies, is it true that mega agencies have certain teams in their pocket, and, like, quite frankly, if the player doesn't go with them, they won't get that job?
Yeah, I mean, that's it depends on how good the player is. If the player is really freaking good, they're gonna get that job through whomever,
regardless.
like I said before. So, you know, there's some times where I've gone to a team and I'm like, I'm talking to this player. I think I can get her on board. I think she'll see the value in my company, but I'm not going to go through that with the team because they don't even care. Okay, we have this. We can offer this. Okay, go to the player with that. they still choose the other agent because they're believing there's something they're missing out on, or there's something that they can do that's more special. When in fact, that team is probably going to have way more trouble with me and the contract that I'm going to want, right? That I'm going to
Right.
change and alter on behalf of that player to make sure that it balances out for her. And that's why they don't, it's like, it's perfect. When they work with the other agent, the team's like, I'm happy because guess what? They don't have to do that work. It's boxed up. The contract is done. They're never going to change it because it's working. And if they need to get rid of that player and get another player, they know that agent will give them another player, right? Or they know that team will give them as an agent a player to give to another team so that they can replace that player with somebody else, or the
Right.
player who got fired from that job. So it's like, you won't, if you burn that bridge, if you treat people poorly, so that's a sad fact that like you got to watch out how you talk to people and what you do, and you got to be really diplomatic. That's a skill you must learn coming into pro, and actually much before if you
Yeah.
really want to succeed in sports. But you have to think like, okay, if I'm going this route, if I'm not going to go to a big agency, or if I go to a big agency, I watch how they are, and like you said, I speak up and I change. I do something different. I go to somebody who I believe in, because at the end of the day, I realize that I'm always getting my jobs based on my performance and who I am. And I just need somebody that I can trust and I can see is doing the work to make sure I get what I'm worth. Because a team isn't going to come to me and say, I want that player for, they could pay like, okay, maybe they'll try like with the 10, 20, 30, 40,000 difference through me or an agent that they know. But then if I understand that that's happening and that comes with experience, then I can just say, no, like that doesn't make sense. Like I can't come to her with this deal when she should definitely make 180 instead of 120.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes, are you going to trust when that team says, hey, that agent is not good for you. They're trying to get a deal for you for this much. And then this other agent goes, I'll get you for 140. And guess
Yeah.
what happened to that other 40? Guess what happened to the other? Where'd it go? It's somewhere. That's all I
Yeah.
gotta say. So it definitely is a thing. It's a big, big thing when you get the really big ones, but I'm sure there's got to be some big ones out there that are doing better business or clean business. I wish and hope for somebody who's running super ethical, moral, right, above board businesses, but it's an unregulated market. So more than likely, if you look at humans across the board, and
Yeah.
then you think about who's being agents most of the time, people who really didn't get it done or just saw an opportunity to get a lot of money for not needing to really do that much work. Because the moment I can convince you to sign with me, I know I can get the teams because they like
The
you.
teams are gonna call you.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And I don't know what can be done to help that click for the player. I mean, I understand how it feels to. The
Yeah.
biggest blocker is not having the job, not being able to go and actually apply and for the job, and then not being in a space where the team has your number or can contact you. That's the thing. That's why the agent matters, because you haven't set up anything for like a business or whatever for that person to be able to really reach out.
yeah.
And that's why I mean the marketplaces and stuff are coming up around the world to trying to make that happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch upon, what do you see some of the things with the NIL? Of course, Europeans have been playing in college forever, but now everyone, I've heard of some deals in basketball space of Europeans being proposed deals for NIL from the collectives to make money.
Yeah.
So now the agent game starts earlier now. Who I'm gonna work with. And the same things. There's colleges that know some of this talent. They know they're on the national teams. They've seen them in Euros and stuff, so they know them. But again, the young talent has no idea that no, they already know you. You're not tied to an agent. That's not gonna make or break your career. So I guess just quickly the NIL space. What are you seeing, and what's kind of one piece of advice to players that are the young Europeans specifically, since we are kind of more so about the expatriates and the global overseas players, but those young Europeans that are trying to weigh the option between staying home and playing pro or going and playing the NCAA and taking an NIL deal? What are some things they should pay attention to?
They should definitely pay attention to the fact that if they go, they're on an F1 visa more than likely, unless they were just really extraordinary and the team wanted to help them get an O1 visa. If they get an O1 visa, then wow, it opens some doors. They can have a business, they can really earn money. But if they don't, if they have an F1 visa, then they can earn money in America on the O1 visa.
Mm-hmm.
With an F1 visa, the student visa, or F2, then you cannot earn money in America unless it's, of course, those situations where you're on campus and you're working something on campus and it's all within that community of the school and something that the government really supports usually. Or not usually, always, but you would get money back home.
Right.
So you're usually getting money for work you do back home. What does that work look like? Posting on social media generally. Perhaps having to show up somewhere if it's a really big sponsor or something. I don't know, maybe you have to fly somewhere and then you get money for going there. In your contracts, whatever it says, make sure you're not signing something that gives away your rights in perpetuity. Those two words are the most critical words in any contract. If you give something away in perpetuity, aka forever, longer than you are alive, eternity, right? Get paid, get royalties. Make sure that it says your royalties extend outside of the contract as long as they have rights to use your stuff that you make while you're with them. That is a balanced deal. If the deal says that they have it in perpetuity and you don't get anything after the contract ends, super unfair. Imagine Jordan in that situation.
To close it out, how are you making change? You know, how are you shifting? How are you continuing the mission that you started out with long ago when you started the agency? How are you now continuing to redefine and build upon what you've already built with Elite Volley to keep advocating, to keep helping athletes to reach their goals in unique ways?
Sure. First of all, by really trying to keep a holistic attitude like I do with my life, my learning, with the business, and say, how can I create something that creates value for all involved? Because I feel like it's really the only fair way forward. So this is one way. So trying to make sure, for instance, when we have events, that parents, kids, coaches there, the agency, the athletes I have involved with my agency that want to be a part of those events, everybody can do something, but also maybe they're growing something on the side. Maybe they have their coaching, maybe they have this. So this holistic view, I don't want to ever lose that. The other way is we're still trying to focus on, or we're very focused on, making opportunities accessible for all athletes. So not just the elite athletes out there. We're emphasizing on the importance of educating and equipping them to navigate their careers. And really that means like prepare for and navigate transitions, and then the decisions on where they're going to go, and understanding that those are like fingers going out. There's so many different ways to get to the top. And then the last way is, of course, utilizing technology, forward-thinking strategies to revolutionize the industry. For me, AI and just the idea that giving athletes more power to drive their sport forward is really what drives me. That's what I want, to leave knowing that I was able to accomplish that in some small or great way. I'll be good.
It's powerful stuff, Ryan. I'm so happy was persistent with trying to get in contact with you. Swags was shout out to Swags, the first one to
Swaggerty.
say, hey, I think you should talk to Ryan. And it's been on ever since, and you know, we kind of reconvened and continue to try to collectively find ways to work together and build together. Thank you for your consistency. I always try to make sure I thank the former athletes that have stayed in the industry, because more than ever, as I keep going down this journey, so many transition and they're like, I'm done. I'm healing from it. Like, I don't
Yeah,
care.
healing.
Like, I care no more. And so I do love to give everybody their flowers that like has been through such traumatic, because it is a traumatic experience, some of the things
Mm,
we've gone through, and it does require you to kind of reflect and try to like heal from it, but to stay consistent, because more of us are needed. So definitely thank you for continuing the fight and the journey, and doing your best, because I'm sure it's not easy. I do empathize in some cases with the agents, because I know it's hard, and I know overseas is you're dealing in a space that's not as professional. So thank you, and I guess if there's anything else you want to exit with, of course, let me know. But if not, just drop where everybody can contact you, find you, and follow.
yeah. Well, first of all, thank you back, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak about this, and for you being so diligent about being consistent with me also. I would just say that, you know, choosing to go the athlete route as one part of who we are as humans, you know, it's a very transient path. And we're all, as humans, looking for basically like a forever home. And sport is a forever home for me. And I'm always going to give back in any way possible. And I would just want to remind all athletes out there, agents, teams, anybody in the sport industry, that we have a duty, because we're all in something that requires a ton of discipline and dedication, but that the result of it is inspirational, and not just for the fans, for those involved. And so I think we have a duty to have high integrity and high morals in everything we do. So thank you so much for today. You can find, I think the best place to go is Elite Volley on Instagram, or Elite Volley U21. We have a lot of projects coming up. Elite Volley Global is what we're umbrelling everything under. So thank you,
Nice.
Jordy.
No, for sure.
That's the
Thank
way
you.
it's supposed to be. Single seeds only grow the trees if left alone to breathe. So let's take some time to expose the weeds, feeding off the roots of the culture. Vultures are next to you, convincing you to saving the forest when they the wrecking crew.